Earth didn't dispatch envoys. They deployed a battleship of horror. Part 1: The Galactic Summons. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, broadcast on every frequency known to humanity. It came from deep space, from a place humans had never visited. The words were translated perfectly, as if the senders had been listening to Earth for a very long time. To the species of the third planet orbiting the yellow star designated Sol, you have achieved faster-than-light travel. You have entered the territory of the galactic conquered. You are summoned to the neutral station Pax to negotiate your entry into civilized space. Send one unarmed diplomatic vessel within 30 standard cycles. Failure to comply will result in pacification. The leaders of Earth read those words many times. They understood the meaning hidden beneath the polite language. This was not an invitation. It was an order, and the word pacification was a threat wrapped in silk. For 300 years, humanity had been alone. They had fought their wars, built their cities, and destroyed their planet before learning to heal it. They had spread to Mars, to the moons of Jupiter, and finally to the stars themselves. And in all that time, they had found nothing but empty worlds and silence. Now the silence was broken, and it spoke with the voice of masters addressing servants. Admiral Wei stood in the council chamber of the United Terran Authority. He was an old man with white hair and a face marked by decades of service. He had fought in the Sol Wars, the terrible civil conflict that had torn humanity apart 50 years ago. He had seen Earth's cities burn. He had given orders that killed millions, and he had helped build the peace that followed. Now he listened, as politicians argued about how to respond to the alien summons. "We must show respect," said one diplomat. "We know nothing about these beings. They control thousands of star systems. We cannot afford to anger them." "We should send our best negotiators," said another. "Cultural experts, scientists, people who can learn about them while presenting humanity in the best light." Admiral said nothing. He watched the holographic display showing the message again. He noticed small details the others had missed. The way the message assumed humanity would obey, the casual mention of pacification, the complete absence of any greeting or expression of goodwill. These aliens did not see humanity as equals. They saw them as children to be managed, or perhaps as animals to be trained. Finally, the council turned to, "Admiral, you have been quiet. What is your recommendation?" Stood slowly. His bones ached from old injuries, but his mind was sharp. "They expect us to send a small ship," he said, "unarmed, weak, a symbol of submission. They want to see us crawl before we can walk." "And what would you suggest instead?" Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I suggest we send the—" The room fell silent. Everyone knew that name. The UTS was the largest warship humanity had ever built. 3 kilometers of armor, weapons, and engines designed for one purpose: total war. It had been the flagship of the United Terran Navy during the Sol Wars, when human had fought human across the solar system. It had broken fleets and burned stations. It had ended the war by existing, by being so powerful that no faction dared challenge it. After the peace, the had been retired. It floated in orbit around Neptune, maintained but inactive, a monument to humanity's capacity for destruction, a reminder of what they must never become again. Though repeated one of the diplomats, "Admiral, that ship is a weapon of mass destruction. Sending it would be seen as aggression." "Yes," agreed, "it would." "Then why would we possibly—" "Because they need to understand something," interrupted. "They need to understand who we are, not who we pretend to be, not the peaceful explorers we wish we were. They need to see what humanity really is, what we are capable of, and then they need to see that we choose not to use that capability." He paused. "Unless we are forced to." The debate lasted for 3 days. In the end, Admiral won, not because the council agreed with him, but because they could not think of a better option. The aliens had given them a choice between submission and defiance. offered a third path, a demonstration of strength combined with a willingness to talk. There was awakened from its long sleep. Captain received her orders on a cold morning at the Neptune Naval Yard. She was 43 years old, with short black hair streaked with gray and eyes that had seen too much death. Half her body was cybernetic, replaced piece by piece after wounds received in the Sol Wars. She moved with mechanical precision, and when she spoke, her voice was calm and even, like a blade wrapped in cloth. She had been this executive officer during the war. Now she would be its captain. The crew assembled over the following weeks, 12,000 men and women drawn from every nation and colony, engineers, gunners, pilots, marines. Many of them were veterans carrying their own scars from the old war. They understood what the represented. They knew its history. They also knew why they were going. "We're not going to start a fight," told her officers during the first briefing, "but we're going to make damn sure they know we can finish one." The refit took 2 months. Old systems were updated. New weapons were installed. The ship's hull was repaired but not repainted. The scorch marks from plasma fire remained. The dents from kinetic impacts stayed visible. Every scar was a message. On the day of departure, crowds gathered across the solar system to watch. Some prayed for peace. Others whispered fears about what the aliens might do. A few understood what was really happening. Earth was not sending diplomats. Earth was sending a statement. The engines ignited, blue fire stretching for kilometers behind the massive hull. The ship moved slowly at first, then faster, accelerating toward the edge of the solar system where the FTL jump point waited. Captain stood on the bridge, watching the stars grow brighter. Behind her, Earth shrank to a blue dot, then disappeared entirely. "Jump coordinates locked," reported her navigation officer. Nodded, "All hands prepare for FTL transition." The ship hummed with power as the drive activated. Space twisted around them, bending in ways that human eyes were not meant to see. And then they were gone, hurtling through the void toward a station they had never seen, to meet beings they had never imagined. Far away at the edge of conquered space, sensors detected an anomaly. Something was approaching through FTL, something large. The analysts ran their calculations 3 times, certain they had made an error. No diplomatic vessel could be that size. No single ship could carry that much mass. They sent a message to Pax, warning them of what was coming. The galaxy was about to meet humanity, not as they expected, not as anyone expected. The was on its way. Earth didn't dispatch envoys. They deployed a battleship of horror. Part 2, Arrival at Pax. Ambassador Arian had seen many species arrive at Pax. In his 200 years of service to the Galactic Concord, he had welcomed herbivores from water worlds, silicon-based beings from volcanic planets, and even the strange crystalline entities from the outer rim. All of them had come the same way. Small ships, nervous crews, humble words and lowered eyes. That was how lesser species entered civilized space. They came quietly, eager to please, desperate to be accepted. When the human ship arrived, Arian understood that something was very wrong. He was standing in the observation dome when the FTL flash lit up the darkness. His 4 eyes blinked against the sudden brightness. When his vision cleared, he saw the ship. It was enormous. Arian had served on battle cruisers. He had seen the great carrier fleets of the conquered navy. None of them compared to what now hung in space before him. The human vessel stretched for 3 kilometers, a mountain of metal and weapons floating against the stars. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, covered in strange markings and patterns he did not understand. And the scars. The ship was covered in scars, blast marks, dents, patches where armor had been torn away and replaced. This vessel had seen battle, many battles, and it had survived them all. Around him, other diplomats rushed to the windows. He heard gasps, curses in a dozen languages, prayers to gods he did not know. The sensors throughout the station screamed warnings that everyone ignored because they could see the truth with their own eyes. The humans had not sent diplomats, they had sent a warship. Station commander arrived moments later, her scales flushed dark purple with stress. She was a species known for their calm under pressure, but even she looked shaken. "What is that thing?" she demanded. "Their response to our summons," Arian said quietly. "That's not a diplomatic vessel. That's an invasion fleet compressed into a single hull." "Yes, I believe that is precisely the point." The Concord's peacekeeping fleet scrambled into formation around the station. 12 ships, each one a kilometer long, armed with the finest weapons the Concorde could produce. They arranged themselves in a defensive pattern between the human vessel and Pax. The human ship did not move. It simply waited there, engines glowing softly, weapons silent but visible, waiting. A communication request came through moments later. Commander hesitated, then accepted it. A human female appeared on the screen. She wore a gray uniform marked with symbols of rank. Her face was neither old nor young, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to look through the display rather than at it. Half her face was slightly different from the other half, metal beneath the skin, mechanical parts replacing organic ones. "This is captain of the United Terran ship," she said. Her voice was calm and polite. "We have received your summons and have come to negotiate. We request permission to dock." Commander found her voice. "Captain, we expected a diplomatic vessel. What you have brought is..." "Our diplomatic vessel," finished. "This is the ship we have chosen to represent humanity. May we have permission to dock?" There was no good answer. Refusing would be an insult. Accepting would bring that monster alongside the station. Looked at Arian, who offered no help. "Permission granted," she finally said. "Docking Bay 7, it is our largest." "Thank you, Commander. We will arrive shortly." The channel closed. They began to move, slow and steady, approaching the station like a predator in no hurry to reach its prey. Arian joined the crowd gathering at Docking Bay 7. Representatives from 100 species had come to witness this moment. Some were curious. Most were afraid. A few seemed almost excited, though they hid it well. The ship grew larger as it approached, filling the windows, blocking out the stars. When it finally connected to the docking port, the entire station shuddered from the impact. Even the gentle touch of that vessel was enough to shake them. Then the airlock opened. Soldiers came first. Human soldiers in powered armor, carrying weapons that Arian's experienced eyes recognized as extremely dangerous. They moved in perfect formation, taking positions on either side of the airlock, their helmets hiding their faces. They did not point their guns at anyone. They did not need to. Their presence was enough. Then came the officers, men and women in uniform walking with straight backs and steady steps. They wore medals on their chests, ribbons of different colors, marks of rank and service. Finally, Captain stepped through the airlock. She was smaller than Arian had expected. Humans were not large beings. This one barely reached his chest, but there was something about her that made size irrelevant. She moved with complete confidence, as if the 100 armed soldiers behind her were simply an extension of her own body. Her mechanical eye glowed faintly red as it scanned the room. She stopped before Commander and bowed slightly. "Thank you for receiving us. We are honored to be here." Her words were perfect. Her tone was polite. Everything about her behavior said diplomacy. But Arian saw the truth. He saw how the human soldiers stood ready for violence. He saw the weapon at its hip. He saw the ship behind them, visible through the windows, waiting. This was not diplomacy. This was a message. "Welcome to Pax, managed. We have prepared quarters for your delegation." "That is kind. However, my crew will remain on our ship. I will attend negotiations with a small escort," smiled. It was a pleasant smile that somehow made Arian more nervous than any threat could have. "Shall we begin?" As she walked past him, Arian smelled something strange. The humans had a scent, all species did, but theirs was different. There was sweat, yes, and metal and something chemical, but underneath all of that was something else. It took him a moment to recognize it. The smell of predators, the smell of beings who ate meat, who hunted, who killed to survive. In his 200 years, Arian had met thousands of species. Most were like his own people, herbivores, prey animals. They had evolved to run from danger, to hide from threats, to survive through caution and numbers. Humans were different. Humans were what other species ran from. As Captain disappeared into the station, her soldiers following silently behind her, Arian finally understood why they had insisted on summoning these creatures. They were afraid. And now, standing in the shadow of that terrible ship, Arian understood why. Earth didn't dispatch envoys. They deployed a battleship of horror. Part 3. The nature of humanity revealed. The negotiation chamber of Pax was ancient. Its walls had witnessed 10,000 treaties, 100 wars ended, and countless species brought into the fold of the galactic conquered. The hegemony had built it 12,000 years ago, when they first united the galaxy under their guidance. Now the High Speaker sat at the head of the great table, surrounded by representatives of the conquered's most powerful species. They wore robes of office and carried symbols of authority. They had come to witness the humans bend the knee, as all species eventually did. Captain sat alone on her side of the table. Her 4 marine guards stood behind her, motionless, their weapons visible. She looked small against the massive chairs designed for larger beings. She looked alone against the dozens of alien faces staring at her. But she did not look afraid. The High Speaker began without greeting. His voice was deep and ancient, carrying the weight of, "You have come in violation of protocol. You were instructed to send an unarmed vessel. Instead, you bring weapons of war to neutral ground." "We brought a ship capable of defending itself," replied calmly. "Given that your message included threats of pacification, we felt this was reasonable." Pacification is not a threat. It is a mercy we offer to species too primitive to govern themselves. We govern ourselves just fine. The High Speaker's many eyes narrowed. He was not accustomed to being contradicted. No species had dared speak to him this way in centuries. "Perhaps you do not understand your situation. The Conquered contains 4,000 species and controls most of this galaxy. You are one small planet recently emerged from your own system. You are nothing." Nodded slowly. "We are small, yes. One planet, a few colonies, perhaps 100 billion people in total." She paused. "But I think you should learn more about us before deciding what we are worth." She touched a control on the table. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a blue and green world. Earth. "This is our home," said. "We have lived there for 300,000 years. In that time we have learned many things. We have built great civilizations. We have created art and music and literature. We have reached for the stars." The aliens watched, unimpressed. All species had history. "We have also done other things," continued, "things we are not proud of." The display changed. Now it showed images from human history, real images recorded and preserved. Armies marching, cities burning, bodies piled in mass graves, mushroom clouds rising over ruined landscapes, ships exploding in the darkness of space, their crews dying in fire and vacuum. "This is what we have done to each other," said quietly. "Not to aliens, not to enemies from other worlds, to ourselves. For 10,000 years we have fought wars. We have killed each other over land, over resources, over ideas, over nothing at all." The display showed numbers now. Casualty figures from human conflicts. The aliens had translation systems. They understood what the numbers meant. World War I, 20 million dead. World War II, 70 million dead. The Saw Wars, 2 billion dead. The chamber was silent. Many of the alien representatives had stopped moving entirely. Their eyes were fixed on the display, trying to process what they were seeing. The Sol Wars ended 50 years ago, continued. We fought among ourselves for control of our solar system. We used weapons that could crack moons. We bombed our own cities. We nearly drove ourselves to extinction. She pointed at the, visible through the chamber's windows. That ship was built to fight those wars. It has killed more humans than any weapon in our history. She let that sink in. Then she continued. We came here today because you summoned us. You expected us to arrive weak and humble, begging for acceptance. You expected us to fear you because you are larger and older and more numerous. She smiled slightly. But we have spent our entire existence learning to kill each other. We are very good at it, better than any species has any right to be. The High Speaker tried to interrupt, but raised her hand. I am not threatening you. I am explaining something important. We did not come here to fight. We came here hopping to find something better than what we had, peaceful trading partners, knowledge we do not possess, perhaps even friends. Her voice hardened slightly. But we will not be subjugated. We will not accept your guidance like children. We will not let you pacify us. She stood, though it made her no taller than the sitting aliens. You asked what humanity is worth. Here is my answer. We are worth exactly as much as we decide we are worth. Not more, not less. If you want peace with us, we will be the best friends you have ever had. We will trade fairly. We will share knowledge. We will help defend against common threats. She let the words hang in the air. But if you try to conquer us, if you try to control us, if you try to treat us as lesser beings, she glanced at the through the window, then you will learn why we survived 10,000 years of trying to destroy ourselves, and you will not enjoy the lesson. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, one of the minor representatives raised a limb. It was a small being from a species did not recognize. Captain, it said, its voice clicking and buzzing through the translator, your ship disabled its weapons before entering the system. Our sensors confirmed this, yet you speak as if you could fight us. Smiled, our weapons are not disabled, they are sleeping. There is a difference. What do you mean? I mean that what your sensors detected was our ship at 5% power, just enough to travel and communicate. She looked around the room, meeting alien eyes one by one. If you want to know what the looks like at full power, I hope you never find out. Because if that ship wakes up completely, it will mean that diplomacy has failed. She sat back down, folding her hands on the table. Now, shall we discuss terms as equals, or do we have a problem? The High Speaker stared at her with naked hatred, but he said nothing. For the first time in his long life, he had no words. In the back of the chamber, Arian watched everything. He saw the fear in the eyes of his colleagues. He saw the anger in the High Speaker's posture, and he saw something else, something that surprised him. He saw hope. Because if the humans were telling the truth, if they really were as dangerous as they claimed, then perhaps they were not as invincible as everyone believed. Perhaps, after 12,000 years, the galaxy was about to change. Perhaps, Arian thought, that would not be a bad thing. Earth didn't dispatch envoys. They deployed a battleship of horror. Part 4, The Gambit. The High Speaker of the hegemony did not sleep that night. He stood in his private chambers aboard Pax, staring at the holographic display that showed the human warship. It hung there in the darkness like a sleeping predator, its hull and ugly, its weapons silent but present. He had ruled the conquered for 3 centuries. Before him, his predecessors had ruled for 12,000 years. They had built this galaxy's peace through careful manipulation, through subtle threats, through making every species understand that cooperation was better than conflict. No one had ever them openly. No one had ever sat in their negotiation chamber and promised violence if pushed. Until now. The High Speaker made his decision. If the humans wanted to play games of power, He would show them what real power looked like. He sent a message to The response came within hours. 200 warships, the pride of the fleet, would arrive at Pax within one cycle. They would escort the humans back to space for proper education. The galaxy would see that defiance had consequences. The High Speaker smiled as he watched his fleet jump into the system. Captain was reviewing reports in her quarters when the alarm sounded. She reached the bridge in 90 seconds, still pulling on her uniform jacket. "Report," she said. Her tactical officer's voice was tight with controlled tension. 200 warships just entered the system. They're forming a sphere around us. Looked at the display. The enemy fleet surrounded the like a net, cutting off every escape route. Each ship was smaller than hers, but together they represented more firepower than humanity had possessed during the entire Sol Wars. "Open a channel to the station," she ordered. Commander's face appeared on screen. She looked afraid. "Captain, I had no knowledge of this." The High Speaker. "I understand, Commander. This is not your doing," kept her voice calm. "Please ensure that all non-military vessels remain docked. This may become dangerous." "Captain, they have 200 ships. You have one." "Yes, I can count." The channel closed. A moment later, a new transmission came through. The High Speaker's face appeared, his many eyes bright with triumph. "Captain, I hope you understand your situation now. You spoke of strength and capability, but here is the truth. You are alone, surrounded, and your one ship, however impressive, cannot fight an entire fleet." Said nothing, she simply listened. "I am prepared to be merciful," the High Speaker continued. "Power down your weapons, surrender your ship. You and your crew will be taken to space, where you will learn proper respect for your betters. Resist and you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." The transmission ended. The bridge crew looked at their captain, waiting. Turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships, fleet, and the station. I want everyone to hear this." "Channel open, Captain." She straightened her uniform and faced the main display. "This is Captain of the UTS to the fleet. We received your demands. Here is our response." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "No." On 200 bridges, commanders exchanged confused looks. That was it. One word. "We came here to negotiate in good faith," continued. "We brought one ship because we wanted peace, not war. You have responded to our openness with threats and force. This tells us everything we need to know about your intentions." She turned to her tactical officer and nodded. "Wake the ship up." Throughout the lights that had been dim suddenly blazed to full brightness. Systems that had been dormant hummed to life. In the engine room, reactors that had been running at minimum power began to roar. On every alien sensor screen in the system, the readings changed. This energy signature, already large, began to climb. It doubled, tripled, kept climbing. Weapon systems came online. Not the few guns the conquered sensors had detected. Hundreds of weapons. Missile pods, point defense networks, energy projectors, and systems the alien computers could not even identify. "All stations report ready," the tactical officer announced. "Target their engines and weapons only," ordered. "I want them disabled, not destroyed. Minimal casualties." "Understood, Captain." The admiral commanding the fleet watched his sensor displays with growing horror. The numbers made no sense. The human ship was outputting more power than his entire fleet combined. Its weapons were charging to levels that should have been impossible. He opened a channel to the High Speaker. "We should withdraw. This vessel is not what we expected." "Hold your position," the High Speaker snapped. "They are bluffing. One ship cannot defeat 200. The admiral wanted to argue, but he had his orders. He gave the command to prepare for combat. The moved first. It happened so fast that most of the alien crews never saw it clearly. The human ship accelerated at impossible speeds. its hull somehow surviving forces that should have torn it apart. It wove through the formation like a dancer, never staying still long enough for anyone to target. And as it moved, it fired. Rounds punched through engine housings. Missiles struck weapon systems with surgical precision. Point defense lasers cut communication arrays and sensor dishes. They did not destroy ships. It crippled them, one by one, with shots so accurate that they seemed almost gentle. In 4 minutes, it was over. 200 warships drifted in space, their engines dead, their weapons silent. Not a single ship had been destroyed. Not a single crew member had been killed. But the fleet that had come to intimidate humanity had been reduced to floating metal. It returned to its position near the station and stopped. Its weapons remained active, humming with power, waiting. Opened a channel. Her face appeared on every screen in the system. "High Speaker, we have disabled your fleet. Every crew member is alive. Every ship can be repaired. We did this in 4 minutes, using perhaps 10% of our weapons." She let that sink in. "We did not want this fight. You forced it upon us. But let me be absolutely clear about something. If we had wanted your fleet destroyed, it would be dust right now. We chose mercy. Do not mistake that mercy for weakness." She leaned forward slightly. "Now, I am going to return to the negotiation table, and you are going to sit down with me and we are going to discuss terms as equals, not because we are friends, not because we trust each other, but because the alternative is a war that you will lose." She paused. "I hope you understand that I am not bluffing. You have seen what our ship can do when we hold back. You do not want to see what happens when we don't." The channel closed. On Pax, Arian stood frozen at the observation window. He had watched the entire battle, if it could even be called a battle. He had seen the most powerful fleet in the Conquered reduced to helplessness in less time than it took him to drink his morning tea. Around him, representatives from a dozen species were talking rapidly, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and wonder. But Arian noticed something else. The smaller species, the ones who had suffered under dominance for thousands of years, were not afraid. They were smiling. Earth didn't dispatch envoys. They deployed a battleship of horror. Part 5, A New Era Begins. The Galactic Conquered changed that day. Not all at once, not with announcements or ceremonies, but in the quiet corners of the station, in whispered conversations and secret meetings, the old order began to crack. The High Speaker of the hegemony sat in his chambers for 3 days after the battle. He did not eat. He did not speak. He simply stared at the wall and tried to understand how 12,000 years of dominance could crumble in 4 minutes. When he finally emerged, he was a different being. The arrogance was gone from his posture. The contempt had faded from his many eyes. He walked to the negotiation chamber like a prisoner walking to judgment. Captain was waiting for him. She did not gloat. She did not smile. She simply nodded respectfully and gestured to the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming, High Speaker. I believe we have much to discuss." The negotiations lasted for 2 weeks. They were not easy. They resisted every point. They argued over details. They tried to salvage what dignity they could, but in the end they signed the treaty. Humanity was recognized as a sovereign equal within the Galactic Conquered. No species would attempt to control them. No fleet would threaten them. Earth and its colonies would govern themselves according to their own laws. In exchange, humanity agreed to peace. They would not seek conquest. They would not use their weapons except in defense. They would trade fairly and share knowledge freely. It was a good treaty, fair to both sides, the kind of agreement that could last. But that was not the most important thing that happened at PAX. On the final day of negotiations, as Captain prepared to return to her ship, she was approached by Arian. The old diplomat looked tired but somehow younger than he had seemed when she first arrived. "Captain," he said quietly, "may I speak with you privately?" They walked together through the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. The hung in the distance, still visible, still waiting. "You have done something remarkable," Arian said. "Not the battle, not the treaty, something more important." "What do you mean?" "For 12,000 years they have controlled this galaxy through fear. They convinced everyone that resistance was impossible, that cooperation was the only choice. Many species believed this. They submitted. They accepted their place." He paused. "But now they have seen a single ship humble the greatest fleet in conquered space. They have seen the force to negotiate as equals. They have seen that dominance can be challenged." "Understood. You're saying we've given them hope." "Yes, hope is a dangerous thing, Captain. It makes people act in ways they would not otherwise act." Arian turned to face her. "Already, representatives from 12 species have contacted me. They wish to speak with humanity, not officially, not through conquered channels, privately." "What do they want?" "Help, advice. Some want to know how you built your weapons. Others want to learn how you unified your species after such terrible wars. A few simply want to know if you would stand with them if they ever tried to punish them for speaking out." "Thought carefully before responding. We didn't come here to start a revolution." "No, but you may have started one anyway." Arian smiled slightly. "That is often how these things work." The captain looked out at the stars for a long moment. She thought about Earth, about the Sol Wars, about all the terrible things humanity had done to itself. She thought about thee and what it represented, a weapon of destruction, a monument to human violence. But also perhaps something else. "We won't fight your battles for you," she finally said. "We can't. Our people need time to heal from our own wars. We're not ready to be the galaxy's protectors." Arian nodded, unsurprised. "But we can teach," continued. "We can share what we know, not weapons, not at first, but ideas, how to organize, how to resist, how to stand up for yourselves without destroying everything in the process." She turned to face him. "We learned those lessons the hard way. Maybe we can help others learn them more gently. That would be more valuable than any weapon." "We'll see." They stood together in silence for a while longer. Then Arian extended one of his manipulator limbs in what she recognized as a gesture of respect. "Thank you, Captain, for everything." Took his limb and shook it firmly. "Take care of yourself, Ambassador. I have a feeling things are going to get interesting around here." She returned to that evening. Her crew was ready. The ship was fully powered down again, resting but alert. They had done what they came to do. As they prepared to depart, received one final transmission. It was from a young alien, a junior diplomat from one of the smaller species. He asked to speak with her directly. "Captain," he said, his voice uncertain, "I have a question. During the battle, you could have destroyed the fleet completely. Your ship was powerful enough. Why didn't you?" Considered the question. She thought about the Sol Wars, about cities burning, about friends she had lost and enemies she had killed. "Because we've seen what we become when we don't hold back," she said quietly. "We've burned worlds, son, our own worlds. We've killed billions of our own people over arguments that no one even remembers anymore. When we came out here, we hoped to find something better, a chance to be more than what we were." She looked at the stars through the bridge window. "Destroying that fleet would have been easy. We've had centuries of practice at destruction, but choosing not to destroy when you could, that's hard. That's the choice that matters." She paused. "We came here hoping to prove that humanity could be more than killers. Showing mercy was part of that proof." The young alien was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I think I understand. You wanted to show that strength does not require cruelty." "Something like that. Power means nothing if you can't control it. Any fool can burn things down. Building them up is what matters." "Thank you, Captain. I will remember this." The channel closed, turned to her crew. "Navigation, set course for home. Communications, send word to Earth that we're coming back. Let them know the mission was successful." The engines ignited, blue fire stretching into the void. The great ship turned away from Pax and began to accelerate. Across the station, beings of 100 species watched it go. Many of them felt relief. Some felt sadness. A few felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Hope, real hope, the kind that changes things. On Earth, the news of the treaty arrived 3 days later. Celebrations erupted across the planet. Humanity had met the galaxy and had not been conquered. They had stood as equals against ancient powers and had won their right to exist. But in the quiet places, where soldiers and veterans gathered, the celebration was more subdued. They understood what the represented. They knew the cost of the power that had protected them. Admiral Way stood at his window, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. He was thinking about the future, about what humanity would become now that they were part of something larger. They had proven they could destroy. Now they had to prove they could build. It would take time, generations perhaps, but believed they could do it. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended them. They had crawled out of the darkness again and again. They would do it once more. Far away in the depths of the galaxy, species that had been silent for thousands of years began to stir. They had seen what one ship could do. They had seen the mighty brought low. And they had heard the whispered phrase that was spreading from star to star, from world to world, from species to species. Fear the humans, not for what they will do, but for what they choose not to do. A new era was beginning. No one knew what it would bring. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the future was uncertain. And uncertainty, Arian thought as he watched the disappear into the stars, was the first step toward change.